All right, so we are on 4.1, which is graphing linear equations. Again, reference where you can look in your online textbook. So a linear equation is an equation whose line is a graph is a line. So it's got the word line in it. I have underlined here for you. It shows you it's going to be a straight line. If it's not a straight line, it is not going to be considered a linear equation. The points on the line are solutions. So every single point on this line is a solution of it. So if I have the equation y is equal to x plus 1, I can just plug in some numbers for x, solve it for y, and that gives me coordinate points I'm able to graph. So they said start with by plugging in a -1. So if I have the equation y is equal to x plus 1, but I plug in a -1 for x, -1 plus 1 is 0. That's where they got that answer from. For the next one, they plug in a 0. So I did 0 instead of x plus 1, which is 1. That's where they got this number. When they plugged in a 2, they did 2 plus 1, which is where they got the 3. When you write it as a coordinate point, your x value is always listed first, comma, and then your y value, and it's always going to be in parentheses like this. So this tells you it's a coordinate point -1, 0, which would mean from starting here at 0, 0, the -1 tells me to go left or right. It's left because it's negative, and then the 0 tells me how far to go up or down from there. It's 0, so I'm not going up or down at all, so that's that point there. The point 0, 1 says don't go left or right at all, but go up 1, so that would be this one here. And the point 2, 3 tells me to go right 2 and then up 3. So I'm able to graph those points and connect them, and I'm able to graph a linear equation. So if I ask you to graph the equation y equals -2x plus 1, by first making a table of values, you're going to plug in some numbers for x. And again, you can choose different numbers. Some people are going to do -1, 0, and 1, for example. That's okay. I could have also picked 10. I could have picked -1,000. It doesn't matter what number I'm plugging in for x here. But you do probably want to pick ones that are going to graph easily on the graph that's been given to you. So let's take a look at what happens. So I'd have y is equal to -2 times my x value, which is -1. That's what I'm substituting in. So I'm taking this and plugging it in for my x, and plus 1. -2 times -1 is 2, and 2 plus 1 is 3, which means I have the coordinate point -1, 3. When I plug in a 0, I have y is equal to -2 times 0 this time, plus 1. -2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. So as a coordinate point, it's 0, 1. And when I plug in my 2, I have y is equal to -2 times my x value, which is now a 2, plus 1. So I have y is equal to -2 times 2 is -4, plus 1 is -3, which is the coordinate point 2, -3. So then I can graph each of those points. So -1, 3 means left 1 and up 3. 0, 1 means left or right, none, and up 1. And 2, 3 means right 2 and down 3. When I connect them, it should make a straight line. Sorry, it's hard to draw on the computer screen. Should make a straight line. If it doesn't, then you've done a calculation wrong somewhere. If it is a linear equation, it has to be a straight line. Okay, so what happens if we're graphing horizontal and vertical lines? So if I have y equals just some number, it's always going to be a horizontal line. So for example, if I have y equals 2, then that means I'm going to come to where y is 2, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line through it. Why is it going to be a horizontal line? Well, think about some points on here. This would be the point 0, 2. This would be the point 1, 2. This would be the point, 3, 2. What is my y value at every single point along here? My y value is 2. That's what this is saying. Y is always 2. Because there's no x over here, it means it's never going to change. The y is always 2. Okay? Whereas if I have x equals some number, so x equals some number, is going to be a vertical, a straight up and down line. So for example, if I have x equals 4, then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, where x is 4, and I can draw in my vertical line. Now, why is it always going to be vertical? Well, think about points that you have on here. So this would be the point 4, 0. This would be the point 4, 1. This would be the point 4, -1, excuse me. What is x? X is always 4, and that's what this is saying. X is always equal to 4. So if it doesn't have y and an x in it, if it just has a y in it or just has an x in it, you know it's going to be one of these special cases. It's going to be horizontal or it's going to be vertical. And you have to keep it straight which one it is. Let's say you can't remember. So let's say I have y equals 7. Well, you start by going to where y is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you put a point there. And then you have to decide. If I put a point here, would my y value still be 7? Well, this is the point 0, 6. My y value isn't 7 anymore. If I pick the point above it, if I think my line's going straight up and down, if I pick the point above it, y would be 8 here. It'd be the point 0, 8. So it's no longer just y equals 7. So the only way it would work is if it's a horizontal line, because this would be the point 1, 7, 2, 7, 3, 7, and so forth. It's loading, that's why it's not showing up. There's another page. I'm not sure why my page is not loading. Give it a second. Let me try refreshing this page and see if it works. So the next section, I'm going to give you 4 equations and you're going to be graphing them. So that's what you're going to be doing as soon as this loads. So we're graphing the linear equation. Our first one we're going to do is just y equals 3x. So if you want to go ahead and start on y equals 3x, and let's go from there. So start by making a table. Plug in when x is -1, 0, and 2. And then we'll go from there. I scroll down. It is loading. I apologize for the delay. I'm not sure why my computer is not cooperating. See if you can graph y equals 3x. So plug in a -1, plug in a 0, plug in a +1, and then see if you can graph it. It's still not cooperating, is it? Okay, so let me just open up a new tab really quick, and I will just write them out for you. We've got 4 left to do. Okay, so y equals 3x is the first one we're doing. Okay, so again, we start by making our table of values. So -1, 0, and I'll do 1 this time. So if I plug in a -1, that means I have y is equal to 3 times -1, which means I end up with -3. So that's the coordinate point, -1, -3. Okay? Remember, x is always first. If I plug in a 0, that means I have 3 times 0. 3 times 0 is 0, so that means I have the coordinate point 0, 0. And if I plug in a 1, I would have y is equal to 3 times 1, which is 3. So that'd be the coordinate point 1, 3. And then I can graph it. So -1 is down at -3. 0 is at 0. And 1 is at +3, which means I have points here, here, and here. And when I connect them, I do, in fact, get a straight line. Okay? Let's see. The next one is going to be y is equal to -1/2 x plus 2. Go ahead and make your table for that one and graph it. And then we have x equals -4. And then our last one will be y equals -1.5. So go ahead and pause the video, try these next 3, and then come back and check and see how you did on them. Oops. Okay. So we'll go on to this one. So I'm going to plug in a -1, a 0, and a 1. Again, you can choose different numbers. Those are going to be numbers that are going to work pretty well. However, I'm not going to actually use these for this one. Why might I choose different ones for this one? Well, because I'm going to end up having to multiply by a -1/2. So if I change this to a -2 and a +2, notice how it's going to make my life easier, because I'm going to do -1/2 times -2 plus 2. When I do that, -1/2 times -2, that's a +1, and 1 plus 2 is 3. Notice I've gotten rid of those fractions now. So I made my life a little bit easier by choosing numbers that are compatible with the denominator of the fraction that I'm adding by. So if I'd chosen 2, 4, 6, 8, 0, all of those numbers are going to be compatible with this denominator, so I won't have a fraction to deal with. You can get a fraction, that's fine, but it's probably easier to deal with ones that don't have fractions. Okay, so when I plug in a 0, I have negative 1/2 times 0 plus 2. Negative 1/2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. Actually, I should have written this as a coordinate point. Sorry, negative 2 comma 3. And this one was 0 comma, oops, undo, 0 comma 2. And when I plug in a 2, I have negative 1/2 times 2 plus 2. Well, negative 1/2 times 2 is a negative 1. And then we do negative 1 plus 2, which is a positive 1. So I have the coordinate point 2 comma 1. And then I can graph it. So I have the point negative 2, positive 3, 0, positive 2, and 2, positive 1. When I connect them, take a look at this. Notice this one's slanted in the other direction. We're going to learn more about slope in the upcoming lessons, but just keep in mind this one is slanted a different way. And it's because this has a negative in here. So we won't go into a lot of detail on that yet today, but just keep that in mind that that is why this one ends up slanting this way. Okay, for x equals negative 4. I don't really need a table for this one. I can just go to where x is negative 4. Be careful, y's would be up and down, x would be here. So I've got where x is negative 4, which is right here. If I were to draw a point right here, this would be the point negative 3 comma 0. My x is no longer negative 4. So that's my reminder that it is going to be a vertical straight up and down line. And the last one, we have y is equal to negative 1/2. So I'm going to go down halfway between negative 1 and negative 2. That'll be my point. Again, this one I'm going to be drawing horizontal because all along there my y value is negative 1/2. This is the point 0 comma negative 1/2. This would be the point 1 comma negative 1/2, 2 comma negative 1/2, and so forth. Okay, so we have our graphs. We've practiced making the tables. For all of these you're going to be doing today, I want to see the table written out just like this. Oops. I want to make sure that you do have the table written out. This would be the work I would want to see that shows me how you get that graph. So right now, go ahead and take a second, write your summary. How do you use a table to help you graph a linear equation? Make sure if you have questions, you're writing them down. Get those questions answered. Make sure you're asking for help on things that don't make any sense to you yet.